There's a particular stillness that settles over baseball just before it roars back to life, a calm that feels deceptive, like the deep breath before a storm breaks. Good morning, Blue Jays fans, and welcome in, because even when the news cycle slows and the headlines whisper instead of shout, there is always something simmering beneath the surface. I'm your host, Craig Borton, and you're tuned in to Jay's latest right here on the Blue Jays Report, the place where quiet mornings turn into thoughtful conversations and small details grow into big expectations. This part of the calendar often gets labeled as downtime, a lull between moments that matter, but baseball has never really understood the concept of nothing happening. It's a sport that moves internally, that plans in silence, that sharpens itself away from the spotlight. And with pitchers and catchers reporting in just under 2 weeks, the Blue Jays are already stretching in the shadows, preparing to show us who they really are. If you're settling in with me this morning, take a moment to like the video, share it with another Jays fan who can't quite switch off either, and make sure you're subscribed to the Blue Jays Report, because these are the moments where belief quietly begins. One of the more intriguing new faces set to arrive at camp is Tyler Rogers, a man who doesn't just pitch differently, he seems to defy geometry altogether. Rogers recently sat down on Whit Merrifield's podcast and spoke candidly about free agency, his journey, and what brought him to Toronto, and listening to him felt like peeling back the curtain on a player who genuinely values fit over flash. When free agency opened after the season, the very first call he received came from the Toronto Blue Jays, and that mattered. In a market often dominated by numbers and noise, there was something grounding about being wanted immediately. Rogers spoke about entering free agency without a checklist of demands or a map of preferred destinations. He simply wanted somewhere that felt right, somewhere he could pitch, compete, and be himself. That quiet humility says a lot, but what really makes him fascinating is what happens once the ball leaves his hand. Calling Tyler Rogers a submarine pitcher almost feels inadequate, because what he does looks less like pitching and more like physics being politely ignored. The release point is so low it feels as though the ball is emerging from the grass itself, skidding and darting with a negative angle that hitters simply aren't built to track. Watching footage of Rogers is like watching bowling lanes appear on a baseball diamond, the ball gliding in from impossible places, forcing batters into awkward, uncomfortable decisions. It's deception layered on precision, and it's exactly the kind of weapon that can change the texture of a bullpen. What makes this transition even more interesting is that Rogers is also stepping into a completely new routine. After years of spring training in Arizona with the Giants and Mets, he'll now experience the Blue Jays facilities, their rhythms, their expectations. New surroundings often spark new energy, and it will be fascinating to see how that plays out once camp opens. In Toronto's bullpen, Rogers feels like a stabilizing force, someone who can bridge the gap, disrupt timing, and hand the ball over with momentum still intact. Slotting him in alongside Jeff Hoffman, a hopefully healthy Yimi Garcia, and emerging arms like Bowden Francis creates layers, options, and matchup nightmares. It's the kind of bullpen depth that doesn't scream for attention, but quietly wins games in the margins. And margins, as we all know, are where seasons are decided. With pitchers and catchers almost here, it feels like the perfect time for a little bold prediction fun, because hope is at its purest before the first pitch is thrown. The name that keeps tugging at my curiosity is Lewis Varland. We caught glimpses of his potential late last season, saw how he was trusted in high leverage moments, and there was an electricity to his appearances that suggested something more was brewing. Varland throws hard, but more importantly, he throws with intent. Velocity paired with control is a rare and dangerous combination, and he has both. There's a confidence in the way he attacks hitters, a sense that he knows exactly what he wants to do and how to do it. I wouldn't be surprised at all if Varland comes into spring training with a chip on his shoulder and an eye on the closer's role. That kind of internal competition is healthy, and it pushes everyone forward. Watching him over a full season, rather than in short bursts, could reveal a pitcher ready to take a significant leap. Another storyline I can't shake is the feeling that Jose Berrios is lining up for something of a statement season. Last year ended with frustration, with questions, with moments that lingered longer than anyone wanted. There's a certain type of competitor who responds to that by retreating, and another who responds by charging forward. Berrios strikes me as the latter. I expect him to arrive at camp with urgency, with fire, with the determination of someone who knows exactly what people are saying and plans to answer it on the mound. Then there's Vladimir Guerrero Jr., and the sense that he's quietly plotting something special. The World Baseball Classic looms, and with it the pride of representing the Dominican Republic on a global stage. That kind of spotlight has a way of sharpening focus rather than distracting it. Vlad already looks locked in, already looks like a player who never really stopped working. The footage of him in the cage, driving balls with ease and authority, tells its own story. This doesn't feel like the Vlad who shows up to spring training to get going. This feels like the Vlad who arrives already in motion. Watching the Dodgers celebrate last October, watching someone else lift the trophy, has a way of leaving a mark. I wouldn't be shocked if Guerrero uses that memory as fuel, turning spring training into a personal showcase of intent before rolling that momentum straight into the season. One more bold prediction before we move on, and this one might cause a few raised eyebrows. Joey Loperfido is going to make life very uncomfortable for the Blue Jays decision-makers this spring. In limited opportunities last season, he showed flashes of something real, something that doesn't disappear just because the sample size is small. There's an edge to his game, a willingness to impose himself, and I have a feeling he's going to arrive at camp determined to force the issue. Spring training has a way of revealing players who are ready to be more than depth, and Loperfido could very well be one of them. Like Addison Barger before him, he might put on a show that leaves the front office staring at a difficult choice. Where do you put him? How do you make it work? And can you really afford not to? Those are good problems to have, and they're exactly the kind that signal a healthy organization. As we settle back into our regular rhythm, it's time once again for a better to know your roster moment, and today the spotlight falls on Dalton Varsho. The trade that brought him to Toronto was polarizing, emotional, and endlessly debated, but as time passes, clarity has a way of emerging. Varsho is now firmly established as one of the premier defensive center fielders in the game, a Gold Glove presence who turns the outfield into his personal stage. Last season was uneven, interrupted by injuries and stints on the injured list, but when Varsho was on the field, he made things happen. 20 home runs in limited at-bats, power that seemed to arrive unexpectedly, and defensive plays that felt routine only because he made them so. If you stretch his production across a full season, it's not unreasonable to imagine a 30-home-run hitter paired with elite defense up the middle, and that combination is gold. Batting averages aren't what they once were, and Varsho's numbers reflect the modern game, but his value extends far beyond a single statistic. He impacts games in ways that don't always show up neatly on the back of a baseball card. The comparison to past fan favorites is understandable, but Varsho is carving out his own identity, one built on effort, range, and moments that lift a crowd out of its seat. Looking back now, it's hard not to feel that the Blue Jays have come out well from that trade, securing a long-term defensive anchor in center field while other teams chased short-term highs. Varsho's presence allows others to breathe easier, to take risks, knowing there's a safety net behind them. That kind of trust is invaluable over the grind of a full season. So as spring training approaches and the quiet days begin to fade, the Blue Jays stand on the edge of something new, armed with fresh faces, renewed motivation, and a roster full of unanswered questions. And that's the beauty of it. Baseball doesn't hand you certainty, it offers possibility. I want to hear from you. Who are you most excited to watch when camp opens? Which bold prediction feels closest to reality? And which one do you think will fall flat? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report, because we'll be right here every step of the way. Until tomorrow, have a brilliant day, and as always, let's go Blue Jays.